a fractional CFO about 5 years ago, and we really started digging into the business numbers. And what I've learned over these last 5 years is when people say know your numbers, there's no specificity to that statement. And and there's several, we use these terms like KPIs or metrics or whatever. And there are a few different things that we need to pay attention to. Obviously, our finances is a big one. Job costing is a big one. Those are huge. You need to know those, and you have to really know what your profitability is. But when you really start to distill it down and you look at how those numbers are actually derived, you'll find out that there's a lot of pieces to that. And it's where you spend your money. It's how you look at efficiencies. It's how you cut things when you're not profitable, how you get things dialed in when you see something's working and you want to squeeze the juice out of it. There's just a lot of different ways that you need to know your numbers.
Welcome to the Roofing Success Podcast. I'm Jim Aline, and I'm here to bring you insights from top leaders in the roofing industry to help you grow and scale your roofing business.
Corey Combs, how are you?
Doing good, Jim. Good to be back with you.
Yeah, good to have you back, man. We've been talking a lot lately about numbers, and I thought that the listeners should hear. You've been on a journey, my friend.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, and it's been kind of cool, talking with you along the way. So you've kind of seen what's transpired and kind of where we are now, and so yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah. So for people who didn't listen to the last time you were on or don't know who Corey Combs is and, about South Shore, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Lifelong contractor, which means I apparently am not that bright and have a really, really high tolerance for pain. So, yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. Started as an installer and worked in every role you can have in a construction company, project management, installer, and run production. And, now I'm an owner. I have two different companies, and, you learn a lot being in the owner's seat, even though you think you know the industry well and the business well. There's a whole other layer to it. So
there is, and I think that's the layer that people struggle to thrive in, right? Is that ownership layer, like really great salespeople, really great at production, really understand the process, the fulfillment of the services, how to get people to buy. But there's this whole other thing when you get into ownership. And then, you've had, you don't have a small roofing company. So, as you grow, there are additional, that layer gets thicker. Should we say it that way? That layer gets thicker, right? And there's more and more to learn in that. And so what I wanted to bring you on and talk with everyone about is your journey into knowing your numbers. And so let's start. When did that journey begin with you? Like, when did you realize, and I'm really missing the boat on certain things because I don't know what's happening?
Yeah, it started about 5 years ago, and I brought on a fractional CFO about 5 years ago, and we really started digging into the business numbers. And what I've learned over these last 5 years is when people say know your numbers, there's no specificity to that statement. And and there's several, we use these terms like KPIs or metrics or whatever. And there are a few different things that we need to pay attention to. Obviously, our finances is a big one. Job costing is a big one. Those are huge. You need to know those, and you have to really know what your profitability is. But when you really start to distill it down and you look at how those numbers are actually derived, you'll find out that there's a lot of pieces to that. And it's where you spend your money, it's how you look at efficiencies, it's how you cut things when you're not profitable, how you get things dialed in when you see something's working and you want to squeeze the juice out of it. There's just a lot of different ways that you need to know your numbers. And I think it's, 2025 has not been a banner year for us. It's like we always want to come on and be like, "Oh yeah, I had gross revenue of fucking blah 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 blah," right? Well, we got our teeth kicked in 25, and I don't mind saying that. I mean, that
Yeah.
the market and the industry in Florida is really tough right now. And this year, what I've really learned is that if you don't know your numbers really, really well, and it's time to start dialing back. It's when things are great and business is good and cash flow's fantastic, everything's cool. And then you start looking at your bank account and you're like, wait a minute, like something's off here. And so this is where I've really been able to get really granular and get dialed in with knowing my numbers. But I started this journey we're going to talk about today about 2 years ago.
Okay. And so let's go back to then and those first couple of meetings with that fractional CFO. What were some of those aha moments that you had with them?
Oddly enough, the aha moment I had with the fractional CFO is this is a really, really smart person that knows numbers, they know finance, they know all that stuff, and they're I don't wanna say struggling, but it took a while for us to not only come up with a system, but for us to be able to start utilizing our numbers in a way that made sense for us to make
Oh,
decisions off of. And what I learned is this is a lot more complex than what most people think it is. That was kind of the aha moment. I was like, okay, this is actually really complicated. And it's even more complicated if you're trying to do it really, really right.
yeah. And so those are that's that is an aha moment to me and I think that the audience should understand is like you can get your P&L and look at it. You can look at the job costing of each job. You can look at but what is it what what parts of it matter? Where are the levers? What
Right.
can you what what you know what can you add in, take away to make it more efficient, to when to cut, how to choose what to cut, if there is anything to cut, how to add maybe some investment into certain aspects of it versus like you may add an investment instead of take away an investment. It might
Right.
not be a cut, right? Like there's so many things that you can learn um, in those numbers. So, what are some of the most important numbers? What what are the what are the ones that have the most leverage in that regard that you can really push and pull on the most?
That's an interesting question. I think I would answer it in this way. The numbers that matter the most are the ones that inform you the best on what your next move should be in your business. And that's not always the same for everybody across the board because
Mm.
you have different business models. And what I mean by that is, you have some construction companies that rely solely on insurance work. You have some construction companies that rely solely on retail or door knocking or whatever it is. So our our guiding metrics might be different on how we approach certain things to continue to get the profitability that we need. And what I mean by that is if you're paying for marketing, you need to pay attention to your lead journey and your lead cost a lot more than, because that's going to be one of your bigger expenses. That it just is, right? Besides like commissions and payroll, your marketing is typically going to be one of your biggest, it should be one of your biggest expenses if you're going to run, I think, a meaningful retail business. Yes, that number goes down over the years once you get referrals and, all of those things. And so your percentage of revenue that you spend should go down. But when you get into a tough market like what Florida's been, we've seen that creep up considerably this year. We have to spend more money to stay visible and to capture the same opportunities that we were getting 2 years ago when we really weren't even trying, right? And especially in COVID. I mean, that was like they were just giving away money and right after COVID. It was insane. So the most important numbers are the ones that are going to inform you on what your next step is to either keep you profitable or allow you to cut the things that you might not need that are going to make the biggest impact in your company if you see that your profitability is waning and you need to make some adjustments so that you can just keep the ship afloat or at least make sure you pay your bills and keep your cash flow healthy.
Before we carry on with the episode, let's give a shout out to one of our sponsors. Roofers, let's get real. You're great at building roofs, but are you great at building a steady stream of leads? That's where Job Nimbus Marketing comes in. They know the roofing industry inside and out, and they'll help you dominate Google, Facebook, reputation management, and everything in between. If you want more quality leads, more booked jobs, and more growth, visit the link in the description or the sponsors page on the Roofing Success Podcast website.
So now that makes me think of if, everyone's business is different. And this is the biggest, that's a big point to make, is that everyone's business is different. Everyone's in different stages. They have different teams. They have different marketing they're doing or not doing. There's a lot of different variances in it. So how should someone determine what numbers to look at? So like if I'm, maybe I'm a retail company and I'm like, man, again, like this year sucked, right? Like this year sucked. What numbers can I look at to say how can we make changes for next year? Am I going to look first? I mean, I would, you have your marketing budget, of course, and then there's probably some others that you're looking at down the road, but which ones, or how should someone decide? You can answer it however, right? Like, put yourself in, in every contractor's shoes and go, okay, what should I look at next?
I had to do this. So to back up, you asked me about bringing on my CFO 5 years ago, and what we figured out was, even though we did a pretty good job at our bookkeeping and we did a really good job at job costing and all of that stuff, there were still some variables in terms of how profitable we were at the end of the month versus, some months were very profitable, some months weren't profitable. And so I actually hired a forensic accounting consultant, and she actually brought a lot of perspective to my bookkeeping and to how we the numbers that we were presented. Because you're right, you can look at a P&L and you can say, okay, I was profitable last month and I wasn't profitable this month. Here was my gross revenue, here was my average margin, et cetera. And you're like, okay, well, actually, how do I actually normalize my profitability? What are all those components to my numbers that I can look at that'll normalize my profitability? And so she taught us what to look at. And the first thing that we had to do, which I never really even thought about this, is we had to establish a baseline of what we needed in terms of revenue just to pay the bills. So we had to figure out like all of our expenses. What are our expenses? And it's tricky. It sounds like, oh, you just take your QuickBooks and you figure out like what you spent each month, and you're like, here's your number. Well, the problem is it changes every month. You have different commission, like because you sell more, you have higher commissions. When you pay higher commissions, now your taxes are higher, your workers' comp is higher. So there's this constant moving target. So we had to take a year and we had to annualize everything, and then we had to figure out what our average monthly expenditures are and say, okay, so now in order for us to pay our bills every month, we need $140,000 in cash to pay the bills every month. In order to generate $140,000 in cash every month, we have to sell $680,000 in gross jobs. Okay. So now we've set our benchmark on what we need to sell and produce every month. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Mhm.
And then once we do that, now we can figure out what we need our profitability and what we want our profitability. So at the end of the month, now we can look at our spreadsheet. We can say, okay, we built all of this. So here's our gross total. Here was our profit, and here's our profit percentage. And so that allowed us to be able to set those targets of what we need to build. So now we know exactly how, because what you sell isn't always a barometer of how much cash flow you have or how much money you're bringing in. Because we do exteriors, we do siding, we do roofing, we do windows, we do a lot of different things. Well, there's not a straight line always to, all right, we sold this and then we're going to build it immediately. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. So getting to those foundational numbers, like this is like really what we need to stay afloat. Now we know how to build from there.
Yeah.
What what were the actions that you learned from that? Like now that you know that and you've seen it in action month after month, what kind of things have you come across that you're like, "Oh, this is the problem that we're having. This is how we solved it."
I've actually had to do that this year a lot because we 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 figured out what our gross revenue number needed to be, and we figured out what our cash number needed to be in order for us to stay in business. And we had some months where we didn't meet that number. And so we had to look at the other months where we did hit that number or more, and do we have enough to cover that gap? And the
Mm,
answer going into the later part of the year was no. So I had to cut. I just start. I mean, we were ramped up to run over $20 million with our staff, with our overhead, with our trucks, with all of that stuff. And so we had to kind of reverse engineer this and say, all right, based on where we are revenue wise, what can we cut to get to that number where we need to be? And, is it renegotiating our insurances? Is it, taking some trucks off the road? Is it reducing staff? Is it, getting with our landlord and getting to a smaller building that has you know what I mean? And so that's the exercise that we had to continue to do. And when we were able to do that, we kind of figured out um what that monthly expenditure would do to reducing our overhead and keeping our bottom line where we needed to be so that we could stay in business.
mhm. It's a challenging thing, right? Like but and it's kind of you kind of said it earlier, but when times are good, we don't think about this stuff, right? Now on the other side of it, you're like, "Oh my goodness. Has this created a situation where you're like, no, I want to always be visible to this. Like, I want to always be looking at this. This is a lesson that I've learned now. I'm not like this doesn't change in the company now. Like we're going to be looking at this on an ongoing basis, whether it goes in a positive or negative direction.
Yeah, there's two things that I've learned from this, and one of them is one of the biggest mistakes I think I've made is not um not being proactive in this regard when it looked like things may be scaling down in the market and the market softening up and not being proactive. The other thing that I kind of regret on a business level is I didn't really look for ways to operate more efficiently so that if we did have a downturn, which it's inevitable. I've been doing this for 30 years. I mean, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. It always happens.
Always.
Like I lived through 2008, which was
Yeah.
just awful, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I think if you stay on top of this stuff and you fortify your finances in a way where you're a lot more nimble and it takes so much less to turn the ship, so to speak, you're going to be in a better position. And I didn't have that perspective, but that was a mistake I
Right.
made. And then on the personal side, I would have done a much better job at stop like I don't have any debt on the company, which is great. Like that, you
Yep.
know what I mean? Like so it's helped me because I don't have any debt on the company. I just paid for everything cash. But I think I would have blended my debt and my cash a little bit better so that I would have more cash sitting there
Mm.
as needed, um, to be able to make different decisions about the business and to fortify ourselves in a downturn.
That's one thing that people don't think about, and it is an important thing I want people to hear is that, like, if you want to run with no debt, understand that when you need money, banks don't lend you money. Banks lend money when you don't need money.
Right.
So if you have lines of credit and you have things available to you when you don't need it, not that you have to use it, you don't have to be maxed out on a line of credit or any of that type, like, you don't have to utilize all of it all the time, but if you don't get it before you need it, you won't get it when you need it. Like, there is no like that.
I mean, they're gonna be looking at your financials go like this,
That's
right? And
right.
they're gonna be like, yeah, they're gonna be
That's
like, "Nah,
right.
I don't think we're gonna lend you any money, man." You know?
And that's how it works, and it's, so building your credit before you need it,
Mhm.
building up your credit lines before you need it, having, whatever you need, your lines of credits with your suppliers, your lines of credit with everything that you need, build it beforehand so that you have another tool when things when the ups and downs come, because oh boy they come. And now if we ever get back to like a 2008 scenario, they did close all those lines of credit, so even if you did have them, they got closed out, or the banks that you had them with went out of business, so it was a whole
Yep.
different situation. But
Yep.
there's a pot, like, just the preparation is probably is what I'm hearing. Being prepared for these things is very impactful, very
It is.
important. Yeah. So now for the last couple of years, you've been really digging in and trying to figure this out on a more individual level, trying to, like, because unfortunately in the industry, there's not a lot of options in most of our softwares that allow you to really dig into the numbers. You need to
Yeah.
really put a few things together and hobble a few things together between your QuickBooks and your Job Nimbus and your and your this and your that, and you're really, to get to the numbers, sometimes it's challenging to get to the numbers. So I know you've been on a journey to get to those numbers. And how's
Yep.
that been? How did you start that journey? Like, what were some of the early things that you did? Like, all right, I have this tech stack, and I know the numbers are in here somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
like
That's a good way to put it, right? They're in here
right?
somewhere, man.
They're in here somewhere. I just don't know how to put them together.
Uh, yeah, I just real quick, I want to go back to the line of credit thing,
Yes.
and this will dovetail really nicely into what we're talking about. That can also be the kiss of death for you when your business starts to slide and you panic and your cash flow is not really good. What the discipline and trying to figure that out before you leverage that credit
Mhm.
that you have available to you is critical, because if you don't, that can actually exacerbate the issue
Yep.
considerably,
Yeah.
right? So that's the
Yep.
other thing I did really right, is not using these lines of credit and overextending myself and getting
Mhm.
into a position where it's like, "Oh my god, I just dug myself a way deeper hole here, and now I don't have the revenue to get out of it." And so
Yeah.
I just wanna say that, like, that can I've seen it sink a lot of people. They think it's a lifeline, but was actually an anchor around their neck.
Yeah. That's a good point, because if you are still running an inefficient business
Yes.
and then you're throwing money at an inefficient problem that has an interest rate attached to it,
Yes.
then you're the US government. I mean,
Yes. Right. It compounds the problem for sure.
right.
I know you're enjoying the episode, but let's give a shout out to another one of our sponsors. I talk to contractors every day that feel stuck. Not because they're not working hard, but because they're missing the structure to growth without chaos. Or their culture's falling apart because their team's unclear, unaligned, or just burned out. And when change hits, they're reacting instead of leading because time and priorities aren't under their control. Day 41 Thrive helps to fix that with proven strategies for growth, culture, and leadership that actually work. Ready to thrive beyond the storm? Visit the link in the description or visit the Roofing Success Podcast website on the sponsors page to start your journey today.
Oh, then you have some problems. And so there's cash flow issues, right? And you so that's a great point. Is don't just have have the access to it, have some discipline and have ways to take action. The first thing you do isn't run to the line of credit. The first thing you do is try to figure out how you need to adjust your financial picture to
Yes.
keep things going, with the line of credit being a cushion as to in your cash flow, just to get you from the month that you have profitability to the month that you don't, through the month that you do, the month that you don't. That's a better way of putting it, probably.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So go back to go back to the question. So I've been on this journey. Really, I've been on this journey trying to figure out a better way to get to these numbers instead of having all of this data out there and all of these spreadsheets and all these conversations with my CFO. And we got pretty good to where we we didn't even we didn't even try to pull reports out of the CRM anymore because it just made it more confusing. So we literally just we built all these spreadsheets, and we had a we had a sales and commission spreadsheet, we had a production spreadsheet, and then we had another spreadsheet that pulled all the numbers from the sales and production spreadsheets and gave us the KPIs that we wanted to see from both of those. But that was only what you would consider after the fact data. There was no
Mhm.
way to see what was going on in real time to sort of get a feel for how things would shake out at the end of the month. I mean, we could, from our production standpoint, we could take a look at what we had on the schedule, what we thought we could build, and we could build out some some predictions of
roughly where we were going to finish at the end of the month, right? Um, but on the sales side, it was a little more difficult because we didn't have a whole lot of visibility of the pipeline. And so what we started to do is there's a software called Fathom. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but what we started to do is we started to build out these templates in Fathom, and we had a lead conversion template. We had um, uh, a gross revenue template, and then that was tied to our production template, and then that was tied to our job costing and commissions template. And so we started building out all these different reports in Fathom that would give us the information that we needed in terms of lead conversions and all that stuff. The problem is that it was all built off spreadsheets, and there's two inherent problems with spreadsheets. One, getting the data in there is very time consuming and costs a lot of money. So I had somebody on staff that was their full-time job. That's what they did. They just grabbed data and threw it in our spreadsheets. The second inherent problem is if you screw up and you manually input data incorrectly, it can throw off downstream whatever numbers you're trying to extrapolate from that particular spreadsheet. So if somebody makes a mistake on a keystroke, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Um, so what that did for me was we started to get some of the information we needed in these Fathom reports, which was great. I went over that with my CFO every month. We went over the Fathom reports. We saw where we were going. We built predictions. We did all these things, but I I was tired of just the massive. I mean, that is all I spent my time on, right? Was just talking with my finance admin, talking with my CFO, making sure the reports were right, then meeting with my team on Mondays, going through the spreadsheet, updating these sheets. It was just such a pain in the ass. And I thought like, all right, there's got to be a better way to get this information. There's got to be some software out there that can help us. And I just researched, I talked to people, called, I mean, there's nothing, right?
Yeah.
There's lead tracking software. There's one that just came out, Searchlight, which will, give you, your conversions, it'll give you your tracking, it'll give you your financial, all that stuff. But that only tells the story on the front end, and it only tells the story of what you quantify in terms of your lead sources, right? So what I mean by that is if you don't have a way to track your lead sources, or you don't have a mechanism in place to track all your lead sources, that data is not going to be accurate that comes out of there. And so it became a data problem for me to try to solve. How do we get all the data, consolidate the data, and then put it all together in a usable way that makes sense? So that's the journey I've been on.
So that's a couple-year journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been working very, very hard on this for about 2 years.
And it's come to fruition.
Yeah.
You actually have it. It works. I've seen it. We've sat down and looked at it like we went through things and is this the right thing to be looking at and not looking at? And we've gone through a lot of it. Um and and let's just talk about like how the theory behind like what you're allowing people to look at with the software.
Even if you can pull numbers from your marketing sources and you can see exactly what's happened with your marketing sources, there's no visibility between the handoff of your marketing sources to what happens when they get to your CRM as a job opportunity. And so there's a few things that can happen in between there, and there's just no visibility with any tools to see that. And then after it gets into your CRM, there's no visibility to follow that journey all the way through the pipeline to where it's sold or lost. And so even though you technically can get that data, absolutely, there's nothing that shows you stage by stage and
Uh-huh.
the conversion rates at each point in the process. And so that's what we've built. We've built a tool where you can follow that lead from the first contact that came from your lead source all the way through the sales funnel. And you can see what happens stage by stage. So you can see where it's leaking. And then we've got a whole bunch of data in between there. You can see your lead sources, what you've spent, what converts the best to sold jobs. You can track your sales reps on a granular level with that lead all the way through the sales funnel. And it's all right in front of you. You don't have to pull these reports. You don't have to put this spreadsheet. You don't have to do any of that stuff. It literally pulls the data for you and presents it in a real time way where you can look at it and you say, oh, I can see why Jimmy's not doing very well. He's not writing his estimates. Or I can see why, Jim said I had, 30 leads that came over to me and I only have 10 opportunities in my CRM. I see exactly what happened. I've got to fire my admin. She's not answering the phone. So it brings visibility and transparency from, what we have one of our biggest expenses, and making
Yeah.
sure that step by step these things are being handled properly to get into our CRM. And then when that's handed off to the company, they're handling that portion properly as well.
I know you're enjoying the episode, but let's give a shout out to another one of our sponsors. If you and your team aren't trained on AI yet, you're already falling behind. Competitors using AI are generating more leads, closing jobs faster, and running leaner. The AI roofing revolution gives your team the training to implement AI so you stay ahead, not scramble to catch up. Don't wait until you're losing. Get trained now at the link in the description or the sponsors page of the Roofing Success Podcast website.
That's the biggest black hole, is the marketing into the marketing through the sales process is the biggest black hole. We dealt with that on our side from roofer marketers, where we'd have clients and they're like, we were able to monitor through the initial phone call or lead submission, form submission. And then it was kind of like, well, it's up to you.
Right.
Now we had all those calls recorded. And so we knew if the call was answered or not. We could actually go and listen to the calls, but our team wasn't checking your team member to make sure they're running a good script, to make sure that they're kind and empathetic and helpful on the phone, that they're actually working on booking an appointment and setting proper expectations for the sales rep so that the handoff is really smooth. So, and that's, that to me was one of the biggest levers we saw and do see all the time, is like, do you even know what people are saying on the phone? Do you know what your team is saying on the phone? Do you have a script that they're using? Oh no, so-and-so answers the phone and they do a good job. I've known them for years. They've worked for us for 15 years.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, they know what they're talking about. You might want to secret shopper yourself a little bit
Yeah.
and find out. But those are the places, man. And like Adam Bensman, we in the RSRA, he put out the marketing control system, marketing control framework for everyone, and that was one of the first things that a lot of people realized, is they're like, oh, we're failing here. We're not failing there. We're failing here. We're not failing at generating the potential business. We're failing at turning that potential business into a sale, either at the phone, at the initial appointment, or your salespeople might suck too. Like,
Yeah.
that's another thing that will become very visible along
It 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 does, and you bring up a really great point where you know we as business owners we make a lot of assumptions sometimes when we hire somebody, and or our mom works for us, or our cousin works for us, or whatever. Oh yeah, they're doing a great job. They're handling everything the way they should be, and the data tells a different story where it's like, okay, we had this contact come in, we qualified this contact, which means we filtered out all of the things that weren't actual good leads, right? Spam calls, people looking for jobs, whatever it is. They called off your Google ad and they're looking for a job. I mean, we know all those things happen, but we filtered all these out, and now these have hit your CRM. And then in your CRM, um, it didn't get registered as a job opportunity. So we have this qualified lead that went into the CRM, but it never got booked as a job opportunity. Well, what happened? And so if you don't have visibility there, it can look like poor lead quality, or it can look like that the numbers just don't jive, that the marketing company is giving you versus what you're actually seeing as opportunities hit your CRM. And so that was the first real leak that I was surprised to see. The interesting thing about this journey is it is a complex problem to solve because there are so many data points.
Yeah.
And we've been so we have about 10 companies we're beta testing. We've beta tested this with. And it's crazy how out of those 10, like, there's so many unique situations that happen with these 10 different companies that now we're like able to just completely normalize it across the board because we see exactly what's happening, and we can pinpoint and identify the point in the process. And this is just lead to get into the CRM.
Yeah.
This isn't the sales cycle after it's been handed off to the salesperson. And so I was talking with one of them yesterday, and she was like, "Man, this has just been so helpful." And she's like, "This is going to save me like 10 to 12 hours a week." A week. That's crazy.
It's a lot of time saved. And
It's a lot of time saved.
that's what I was thinking when you were, I mean, you said it. You had a full-time person putting numbers in spreadsheets,
Yes.
copying and pasting into spreadsheets, right? Like, and then even when it's in there, you have to analyze it in a proper way. You have to make it, give yourself the ability to see it in a way that you can make good decisions from it. And so good. You're solving a problem, Corey. You're solving a problem, and it's not an easy problem to solve. So one of the things that will happen is you'll be able to see if your marketing company sucks too. I don't want to put it all on your internal team, right? Like, but
Yeah.
you get visibility. You need visibility into the whole process, into whether your salespeople are doing a good job at the kitchen table, whether your team is doing a good job on the appointment set, and are your marketing efforts producing good results, and which of your marketing efforts are producing better results than others, right? Like, so we want to definitely get to that full visibility all the way through, Corey. Like, you're following it. Now you get to follow it from that first interaction all the way through. What are some of the, I mean, we talked about some things that have already happened, but what other things have come from this?
Man, there's been so many things that I've learned, and the things that have come from this for me in my company. The the leaks weren't necessarily where I thought they were. And like, for a good example, our conversion rate on web forms is awful. I mean, it is awful. And what that signaled to me is we need to do a better, and we have instant booking on our web forms and all of this stuff. I mean, we do, but our conversion rate on web forms isn't great. I assumed we had a much higher conversion rate on web forms, but we really don't. Like, we're right around the 50% mark, which is pretty wild. And so, you know, the other thing that really surprised me is the amount of spam calls that we actually get is obscene. You know what I mean? Like,
Obscene. It's
it is
obscene.
obscene.
Yeah.
So to go back to the marketing company, you have good ones and you have bad ones, just like you have,
Yeah.
contractors and all that stuff. And some of them will use the vanity stat of like, hey, we got you 100 leads, and they really don't parse out like 60 of those were spam calls. You know what I mean? So there's visibility on that end. But the thing that I think the thing that I learned about this the most is when you can see the conversion of each step along the way, it really gives you a better insight on, earlier we talked about what do we need to fix? What do we need to focus on? And it just brings so much clarity, because now you can look at and you can say, oh, you know what, my LSA, it converts really well into my CRM, but we don't actually sell that much in
Mm.
gross revenue off of LSA. So, but I actually, even though PPC ads are more money, we generate more revenue off PPC, and we have a decent conversion rate on PPC. So if I look at the ratio between the two, it's like, oh, I would actually be better served upping my budget on PPC and reducing my LSA budget, or vice versa,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And if you don't, if you don't like have the ability to look at those two things side by side and follow them down the funnel, it's much harder to figure that out. I mean, you
Yeah.
can, don't get me wrong, you can figure it out, but there's so many steps involved and there's so much data you got to pull that's involved. And so when you can see that, it really informs your decisions a lot easier and a lot better.
There's another challenge, and I thought it was cool that you're working on solving this challenge too, and that is, where did the lead really come from? Because, sometimes they Google you, they say Google, but it might not be Google, right? Like, so
Yeah.
you're
This
yeah,
yeah, this is a really cool thing that we figured out. So there's so it's lead attribution, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. And so there's two main lead attribution problems. One is, let's say, for an example, you're in a market where billboards, TV, and radio do really, really well, but you also use Google as one of your main platforms for your advertising and your marketing. People will see your billboard, they'll see your commercial, they'll see all of that stuff, and then as soon as they're ready to call you, they Google you, right? Because you spend money on marketing, the first thing that pops up is your ad, what you paid for, your sponsor. They're gonna click on that, they're gonna call you through that, and the tracking number is gonna show, oh, this is a Google lead, right? But when they call and they talk to your CSR, they're like, oh yeah, I saw your commercial. And great. Your CSR puts the commercial in the the attribution slot in your CRM, but your reports all say that it's a Google lead, and there's a conflict there. So what we did is we took and we do a data verification, and then if there's a conflict, we have certain ones that we give preference to. And it's the same thing where maybe your CSR just puts the generic term in there as Google, right? Now we'll do a data verification level, and we'll figure out exactly which Google product it was.
Was it Google Ads? Was it an LSA? Because it's all Google. Do they call you from your website? Still Google a lot of times, right? Like,
Yeah. Right.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's been helpful too because you can really parse out you can really parse out the
yeah,
attribution. So even if you try to pull that report in your CRM, it's not gonna tell you the story
yes.
because it just says Google, and you're like, "Oh, great, we had 30 leads come from Google this month," and it's like, "All right, but which Google product?
Yeah. And a
Is my
lot of
SEO working? Am I actually getting Google organic leads,
and
right?"
a lot of people will set up their job nimbus, because you set your lead sources. So you put in Google, you put in Facebook, you put in and it's too generic, right? Like, so,
Yeah.
you don't takes away your ability to have that leverage. What's really working? And not what's working on the lead cost, because lead cost is a metric that gives some useful data, but not a complete not it's not completely useful data. Lead cost doesn't mean customer acquisition cost, doesn't mean long-term value, right? So your lead cost might be low, and you're like, "Oh, give me more of those." And then it's it doesn't go well for you. So,
Yeah, it's like Facebook, right? For a long time, it was, oh yeah, man. I mean, Facebook's great. The cost per lead on Facebook's amazing. All of this stuff is like nobody really tracks the conversion rate, not only from that lead to the opportunity, from that opportunity to a sale. So if you can do that, you can really figure out like, all right, even though it seems like this is a low cost lead source, is it really a source that's worth us putting money into? And that's what we're working on now as part of V2 is having a full performance dashboard and then a full financial performance dashboard. So you can see your total lead cost, your total marketing and advertising cost. You can see what your ratio to revenue is. You can see and you can track your reps on a granular level with how many leads you've issued to them from a particular source, what you've spent on that, and then is this rep and then their ROI ratio, and is this rep actually profitable for you or not? So we're building that's another complicated problem to solve, but we're using the same framework that we figured out with pulling all this massive amounts of data with endless variations. We've kind of figured out how to organize the data. So we're using that same logic on the financial side.
I'm gonna jump off and jump back in because I think I'm echoing again on your side.
I don't hear you echoing.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'll just add a marker. I thought I heard it in my headphones, and I was like, "Ah, shoot." Okay. Sorry, that got me distracted a little bit. I'm like, "Ah, I gotta fuck." I think it's really important to see that granular data, especially as your company grows, right? It's you may be able to have more of a gut feeling off of 1 or 2 reps. When you get into 5, 10, multiple reps, maybe multiple sales managers and multiple reps, boy, you really need to be able to track that data and get into the numbers. If you had to give advice to a contractor, and that's like just hoping and praying that they're profitable every month, um, what would that advice be to get to a place where they might not have to be a data scientist like you now to but where like what is a path for them to like really at least get to a place where they can be they can be on the competent side of managing their numbers.
This speaks to another problem that I've uncovered, and this isn't a problem necessarily in my company, but this is a problem across the industry. I've spoken to I mean, look, you know a lot of roofers. You've been in the marketing space for a long time. When I first pitched you on this, you're like, "Yeah, this is a huge problem," right? I talked to another friend of ours who, he's been involved with PE and, had a successful company, and he's like, "Yep, this is a huge issue." And even in, when I'm doing some of the coaching and consulting stuff, knowing your numbers is is a problem, but I think one of the one of the more prevalent problems is even if you can present this data to people, contractors, it's difficult for most people, including me, and the only reason I'm more comfortable with this now is because I've just dug into this at so much and at such a granular level that even if you get this data, how do you use it? What is it for? How is this actually in a practical way going to help me and my company? And more importantly, I I don't really understand this at a deep level, so I'm not sure I can use it. And that was that's been one of the more surprising things to me because I've talked to a bunch of contractors, showed them this, showed them what it can do, and they're like, "Yeah, this is great, but ah, I'm not sure," and it's like, "Okay, I understand there's an intimidation factor when you really don't have 100% clarity on something, and it's like, "All right, you know what? I'm just not gonna do anything." A, I I don't wanna get into something that I really don't understand, and B, I don't wanna pay for something that I'm not sure I'm actually gonna get practical use out of and get my money back. So the other problem that I've uncovered is, um, most contractors don't buy things for upside. They try to they you can see people changing CRMs because they know that they need something, but and they think they can get it out of a particular tool, but they never get it out of that tool, right? And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help people understand that this is where we can pinpoint losses, exactly where we're losing certain things. And more importantly, there are specific conversations and people that are responsible for those. And now we can employ a solution. So, what I think what the thing that I want to do is I want to make this accessible enough for even the people that don't have, I mean, most contractors don't have a finance degree.
Yeah.
Most contractors struggle with really knowing their numbers at a granular level. So I want to bring clarity and some simplicity with this tool so that we can actually as an industry run better businesses and not get swallowed up by these white collars that are coming in that if we don't figure this out then they're gonna push us out of the industry.
Yeah, that's true. And so what I heard is people need to know what to do with the numbers. And that's there's a big gap right now is if you know, like, do you know what action items you can take? Do you know what you can do even if you know? And are you willing to do it? Because that's another part of it. Hey, that person that's been with you for 10 years and they're answering the phone and you might have to have some rough conversations. Might have to have some rough conversations with some salespeople. Might have to have some rough conversations with your marketing, agency. You might have to have like there's 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 things that will come up in the discovery of this, but it's like, well, okay, great. Now I see it. What do I do next, right? And that's a big challenge. So how does someone determine what, like, it's those action items, right? Like, so now that they see, is it that they need training on certain things? Like, would you seek like, should they seek sales training, or like what things, as they uncover these things in their businesses, what do they need to find out? What do they need to close that gap?
That's a great question. A lot of contractors hire consultants because they see the problems and they need the problems solved, and they think that they can hire this consultant and this consultant's going to solve the problem. What I've heard more often than not, with the exception of some guys that we know in the industry that are really good, they know their stuff. But they're very expensive because they know their stuff, and that's not accessible to
Yeah.
the mid-level guys that, need to take that next step. And so this is a tool that will not only expose those areas, but if you have a metric that isn't meeting industry standards, then you click on that metric and it'll tell you what the problem is, who the problem, who's creating the problem, and then what the solution is to solve it.
Got it. So you're building that into the tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's insights in there. There's insights in there, and there's training in there, so that it's not like, okay, I understand that this is not good, but what the hell do I do with that?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, okay, this is not hitting industry standard.
Yeah.
And here's why it's not hitting industry standard, or the possibilities of why it's not hitting industry standard. So it's hard to say exactly why a PPC campaign isn't converting well. It's kind of hard. I'm like, it could be your copy,
Yep.
could be like, there's a lot of reasons, right? However, if I tell you as a contractor, look, your PPC campaign is not converting, cool. And here's the proof that it's not converting. Now I can come to my marketing guy and be like, yo, all right, you need to do your job. It's not my job to figure out why your PPC campaign is not converting, but it's my job to tell you that it's not converting and you need to figure it out.
Yes. The same way, and this is back to what we do in the RSRA with the marketing control system, is that you have to be the GC of your marketing, right? Like,
You have to.
and to be the GC of your marketing, you have to know enough to know if what is being done on the job is effective or not, right? Like, if one of your subcontractors is a plumber, and the sink is leaking, there's a problem, right? It may not be as obvious sometimes, right? Like, it may be,
Yep.
We were talking about, both of us have had some furnace issues over the last couple of months or whatever, right? Like, sometimes it's like, oh, what the heck is going on here? You don't know what's going on, but you need to keep trying. At least you're able to go, okay, this is what I want to try next. This is something I can try next. This is something I can try next. And that's the biggest thing. But I love that you've taken on this journey of putting all this together, and that you're bringing it to the industry. And it's going to be a fun ride, man. So we'll put some links in the description of how people could reach out to you if they want to get in on the beta program or have a conversation with you about this stuff. And because I think people need it. Like, it is a gap that needs to be filled for sure. So appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into
Thanks,
the
Jim.
Roofing Success Podcast. For more valuable content, visit roofingsuccesspodcast.com. While there, check out our sponsors for exclusive offers, shop for merchandise, and sign up for our newsletter for industry updates and tips. Also, join the Roofing Success Facebook group to connect with other professionals and stay updated on the latest trends. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment. Your support helps us continue to bring you top industry insights. The website link is in the description. Thanks for listening.